Hey everybody, before we get into today's video, I want to acknowledge that I had some oral surgery this week to address a tooth that had resorption. It's kind of a weird thing where your tooth eats itself from the inside. It's what happens when your tooth falls out, but sometimes your adult teeth do it and it's not good. Anyway, my gum had to be cut and then sewn back into place during surgery, so a bit of my mouth does look a bit gross right now. I wasn't going to mention it, and then earlier today I looked in the mirror and I realised that if I didn't and I opened my mouth just right, the comments would be full of people asking about my black mouth. So yeah, my gum does look a bit poorly in this video. Sorry. We all love ourselves a bargain, and it doesn't matter if it's a buy one get one free deal at the local supermarket, a discount code for something online, or for the super hardened bargain hunters out there, a Black Friday deal that you camped out for 2 days to nab. Although I'd quite happily pass up the Black Friday nonsense because being in close proximity to that many people is my personal idea of hell, and I would quite like to continue to believe I'm in the good place, even though the world's governments and politicians are working diligently to convince me otherwise. Of course, the more expensive the thing that you're buying and the larger the deal, the happier you're likely to feel when you save big bucks. And in our world of cleaner, greener, safer and smarter vehicles, being able to get an electric vehicle for less than sticker price is something of a holy grail, especially when automakers and dealerships are putting their prices up more frequently than Michael the architect keeps hitting reset. So when we hear about deals that let regular folks buy a car like a Tesla Model 3 for more than $15,000 less than MSRP, we, like you I'm guessing, want to know more about it, especially when headlines in various news outlets make it sound super simple. The reality though, like any deal that seems too good to be true, you're gonna need to meet some specific criteria in order to be able to nab that kind of a bargain. So today I'm going to delve into the claim that you can buy a brand new Tesla Model 3 for less than $27,000 in the state of Oregon, where this show is based, and I'm going to give you some important information behind the headline that adds some much needed context. Let's do this. Before I get stuck into this particular super awesome, almost too good to be true deal, let's make something super clear. I am not a tax professional, nor do I claim to be one. I do not play one on YouTube, and as always, whenever you make a financial decision, you should seek professional advice from someone who is a trained financial expert, and professional tax advice from someone who is a trained tax advisor. Me? I am neither. I'm also bound to get something in this video wrong, so please double check what I say for yourself. So, halfway through February, The Street ran a piece on its website stating that a Tesla costs less than $30,000 in the state of Oregon. It was a story which was then picked up by Teslarati, and then by Inside EVs. And somewhere in that process, the headline price of that Tesla Model 3 shifted down to below $27,000, more than $15,000 less than the official sticker price for the entry-level Tesla Model 3 at the time of filming this video. And to be clear, I'm not saying that the reporting was wrong. We're saying that the story is far more complex than those headlines might lead you to believe. As the original article explained, the state of Oregon now has some of the most generous EV incentives in the entire US, offering incentives for both new and used plug-in vehicles under the Oregon Clean Vehicle Rebate Program. Like some incentives offered in other parts of the US and other parts of the world, these rebates are added on top of any nationwide incentives and, as the article details, can reduce your effective sticker price by up to $7,500 on top of up to $7,500 in federal tax incentives you can claim back if your vehicle ticks all of the right boxes. Add in some incentives from Oregon utility companies, many but not all, that reward customers for either buying a new EV, installing a charging station at home, or sometimes even both. Add in some predicted fuzzy math of gasoline savings, and you're at that magic figure. But just as similar articles we've seen over the years from other parts of the world, the specifics here are potentially crippling. What's more, they can prove frustrating for those who go into a car buying decision believing they're eligible when they're not. Like I said, knowing what the actual rules are and consulting with both a financial advisor and a tax advisor is always the way to go. And while this video is definitely a very much inside baseball, because it's in Oregon, it's important to know that the skills I'm using here to highlight the catches and caveats are skills that you should use when someone tells you a deal in your area feels too good to be true. Let's start by discussing the US federal tax credit. It is a complete metaphorical car crash since the US Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 was signed, and current rules, as they stand right now at the point of filming, means that if you're buying a new electric car in the US with an MSRP of less than $55,000, or a new electric van, SUV, or pickup truck with an MSRP of less than $80,000, and your household income falls below certain limits as described by the federal government's modified adjusted gross income, you could maybe be eligible for $7,500 in federal tax credits for the tax year in which you buy the vehicle this year. Those figures you're seeing on screen right now are the current limits based on your tax filing status. And at this point, I need to make sure that you understand that MSRP is the base retail price provided by the manufacturer of the vehicle, as well as the retail price of any factory fit accessories or options you spec'd for your vehicle. If the dealer fitted it, it doesn't count towards that price. But if it was on the vehicle when your vehicle rolled up on the back of a car transporter, it counts towards that limit. What doesn't count, though, is all of those extra fees and taxes that will be added on for your local area, things like registration fees and any dealer adjustment fees. If you're buying a used EV, thanks to last year's Inflation Reduction Act, there are also now incentives for used EVs, but the income cap for the person claiming them and the sticker price for the vehicle goes down. The filing status is listed on screen now as of being correct at the time of filming, and the sticker price has to be less than $25,000 US. If you're confused yet, don't worry, because I'm going to be honest, it's easy to be. Oh, and let's not forget that in order to be eligible for a US federal tax credit of $7,500 US, you also need a tax liability of at least that amount. Later this year, all of the eligibility requirements for EV incentives will change when the IRS publishes new guidance to bring tax credits in line with the actual intent of last year's Inflation Reduction Act, namely that incentive eligibility will be dependent on not just your income level and the vehicle's sticker price, but where the vehicle was made, where its battery pack was made, and where its various constituent components originated. But I'm sorry, I'm not going to go into those right now because it is a hot mess right now, and many world governments are royally pissed off with the Americans over what is being branded anti-competitive and protectionist practices by the US. So this could all change anyway. By now then, I think you'll probably agree that earning that first $7,500 US of tax credits isn't clean cut, and it isn't a shoo-in in terms of a big fat check on your doormat from Uncle Sam. Oh, and before I forget, that tax credit is something you will have to wait until you've filed your taxes to receive. So, if you buy an EV in, say, February, you'd have to wait a whole year, maybe more, to get that money back. And you shouldn't factor in the cost of that tax credit in your purchase decision either, because for a year at least, you'll likely be paying interest on that $7,500 in the form of a new car loan. unless of course you lease, in which case it's factored in at the point of vehicle acquisition. All of the federal stuff out the way, let's look at the state of Oregon, where I live, where yes, in some cases you can get up to $7,500 for buying a new EV. But there are catches. Big catches. First off, while Oregon's Clean Vehicle Rebate Program offers a flat $2,500 cash rebate for all new vehicles, there is a maximum MSRP of $50,000 for eligible cars. That's much lower than the US federal tax credit, but luckily in the case of that entry-level Tesla Model 3, it would be eligible. Next, we come to the charge ahead rebate. The extra money made available to you makes that hypothetical Tesla Model 3 much more affordable. While Oregon used to have an address-based verification tool to see if you were eligible for the $2,500 additional funds it used to make available, it now uses a two-stage verification system that doesn't require you to input your address. However, how much your household income can be in order to be eligible depends on the number of people in your home. If there's, say, just 2 people in your home, your total maximum household income can't be above $78,880. And if your household income is above that, you're not eligible for an additional $2,500. To maximize your savings and get a full $7,500 of state incentives from Oregon, you'll actually need to meet the original eligibility requirements for the vehicle sticker price and battery pack size, which needs to be greater than 10 kilowatt hours. But you also need to have a household income of less than 400% of the US federal government's poverty guidance. For 2022, I couldn't find 2023 figures, that equated to $18,310 for a family of 2, and 400% of that would be about $73,200. And by the way, if you're interested, I specifically picked 2 people filing because while the income limits change if you have more people in your household, I know very few parents who have brand new electric cars whose total gross adjusted income would fit into these very narrowly defined categories. By now then, I'm pretty sure that most of you are questioning just who, with that kind of household income, would actually be able to afford a brand new car. While Oregon's EV incentives are in the form of rebates that are either sent to the dealership or to the customer, although processing time for the latter is a little long right now, it's still not the magic $27,000 drive off the lot fee that those headlines might cause you to think. Sure, you might be able to take out a loan for $35,500 instead of $43,000 because you will get the Oregon rebates back earlier, but that's still a lot of money. It's generally accepted, although not always followed, that you shouldn't spend more than 20% of your take-home pay on car payments. So in order to be eligible for all of the above and still be capable of balancing your budget as per experts, your 2-person family's car payment can't be more than $966 per month. And that is assuming that you don't have any insurance payments to make for healthcare and no other deductions other than your federal and state taxes. And while a 60-month loan of that $35,490 Model 3, remember you can't factor in federal tax credits into your loan, with 0 down and a 4.5% interest rate, you're looking at a monthly payment of about $661, which is well below that maximum theoretical amount you'd be paying, but you also have to do lots of other things with the money that you earn, like paying the rent or the mortgage, paying for food, electricity, and all the other things that are required by the task colloquially known as adulting. Given the average rent in Portland, Oregon is now pushing $1,800 a month, that's certainly what my daughter's paying, and the median mortgage is not that far behind the rental fee, I'm doubtful anyone on that income would genuinely be looking to buy a brand new Model 3, especially if they need a second car in their family. You might be able to make it work if you've had a windfall of some sort or you have a good deposit saved up, but for everyone else, you're either earning too much not to be eligible, or your budget just can't make the numbers work. But before you get too depressed, it is worth noting that while that magic Model 3 might be a push using these very specific hacks, it's a completely different story if you were to look for something like an entry-level Nissan Leaf or Chevrolet Bolt EV. Using those same programs to buy one of those might be the smartest move you've made in a long time if you still fit all of the requirements listed. But as always, check the fine print before you sign, seek official financial and official tax advice, and don't always read the news based on headlines alone. And on that note, we are done with today's video. And if you want to know more about the not quite a classic Mac behind me, stick around until after the credits. If you liked today's video, you know what to do, and feel free to tip us with a super thanks. The comments are open for your thoughts, as is our Discord chat room. There's a link below. If you want more, subscribe, hit the bell, and follow the links to regularly support us with a YouTube membership or a Patreon subscription. You'll also find links below to our Ko-fi, Bitcoin, and Swag store, and do check us out on Mastodon. We have our very own server. Scrolling on my right is the list of amazing charged up supporters, and shout outs go out to our self-driving tier supporters: Mike Weeder, Tony Moss, Linda Irish, Sean Tucker, Patrick Boyarski, Paul Nelson, Chris Maxwell, Brian Newton, Michael Goad, Bennett Elder, Andrew Martin, Pedro Mora Pinheiro, Brophy Wolf, Chris and Michael Johnson, Tazlet and the Gong, Dan Blair, Peter Dillinger, Gordon C, Stephen O'Donoghue, Carl Hodgson, Anthony Coates, Regine Fellows, Denny Hyde, Chris Centaur, and Jim Burness. Finally, out of this world thanks to our top tier supporters: Robert Flannery, CPU Freak 101, Andrew Glenn, JP Fagerback, Joe Bresney, John Lyons, Rory Litwin, Kevin Burridge, Dave Kitchen, Aaron Hahn, Laura Reynolds, Marcel Ward, Matthew Drobnak, Paul Conway, Reggie Watts, Will Graylan, Ellery Hensley, and Ian. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let us know your thoughts below. And as always, I'll be back soon with more content, as will the rest of the team. Enjoy the rest of your day, and as always, keep evolving. Today I have with me, I think, my newest old Mac. It is 13 years old, and so I do consider it a vintage Mac. It is an iMac 11,1, I believe, from 2010. It might be an 11,3. My brain is still a bit fuzzy from my oral surgery earlier this week. It is a glorious iMac. It has a fully replaceable CPU, and I have a CPU downstairs that I'm going to be replacing to make it a little bit more capable. You can also replace the graphics card. It is, I think, probably one of the most upgradable iMacs that Apple ever made. It predates the start of Apple kind of locking everything down and using specialist components, but you can put an SSD in this, you can upgrade the CPU, you can upgrade the graphics card, and the screen literally just pulls straight off. No tools required, it's just held on with magnets. Unfortunately, this one has got a little bit of a chip on the glass, so I'm going to need to get some replacement glass for it. I have no idea where I'm going to get it, but it appears that it got chipped when it was in the server room and I was moving some stuff around, so I'm kind of sad about that. Sad Nikki is.